politically incorrect. So, today's the Vendor Speak and Friends show, and you are our friends, and thank you for joining us. Those of you who just joined in, that's me and my friend Ian on the other end, and probably on the top of the pile of people there. So today's a new concept. One thing I do have to say about this show, that the video we just watched, is some of it just, wow, it's so very close to true. And Ian and I had a discussion earlier before we started the show just about, what should be done with during the shutdowns and the pandemic. And, it should be encouraging people to shop local instead of online. And interesting how that video shows somebody, what she checked online as she walks into the store, there's this plate glass that starts showing what she's got. And when I used to talk to people about it, I used to call that the iPhone 12. Well, guess what? It's close. But some of our favorite books here is Change Management, funny enough, and Leading Change by John Cotter. And Our Iceberg is Melting, also by John Cotter, which is changing and succeeding under any conditions. And of course, as always, we want everybody to know that whatever is discussed on the show is the opinion of our guests and don't necessarily reflect our official policy. Although I do have to say, if we say something, maybe it does reflect something for me and or myself. And, so don't, somebody says something bad or politically incorrect, don't hold us to them in perpetuity. Or if we say something politically incorrect, it's not our fault. And today's show is a little bit differently. And as always, our show's for the guests. So if you have a question, moderate the chat box, and we'll call on you. Mind you, today you're very welcome to just post a question. And we've got some questions we've written down, but today is an open show and open forum, and we'll just run with it. And of course, thank you for joining us. And today we're going to try and sell you whatever we can sell you. What the heck?
Jeff, it's interesting because it really is, it's amazing. And I think we'd all love to have that whole setup going through our life, and it would be fantastic. There's a juxtaposition there. And I was looking for it while the video was playing, where it's on YouTube and you guys should look it up, but it's a smart home after the guy goes to the dentist. And he cannot communicate with his smart house, can't even get in his door. It's well worth it. And I think it always falls back to the inability to have everybody that technologically advanced. And it's interesting, because I think it would be fantastic to be able to get up, touch screens, and make everything happen and all kinds of things. But one little glitch and you get a cold day and you get fingerprints all over your mirror and all the stuff that happens, and you stop using it. And
how do them Teslas work in 40 below weather?
How do the what?
How do those Teslas work in 40 below weather?
They get all the way to the end of the driveway.
And then they hoof it back to the house and grab their pickup truck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, that video is on YouTube and it's really funny, but you should look it up. And I think it's cool.
I marked it here to take a look at it. So I'm excited to see that. And it's very true. And like I say, this video, we as you know, we always pick a video to run, and we have some other ones. Then we looked at this and says, wow, this is so neat. And I mean, what I especially liked is they literally walked around with their phone, put it on the counter. There's that glass. It's got everything there while she's in the bathroom brushing her teeth. Her day's calendar is up on the mirror, and pretty neat. And I quite like that guy with the rolled up plans, and flexible glass that he pops it down, and it's very interesting.
When you equate it over to the car business, I spent some time at Mercedes, and you take an S-Class, for example, and that thing just is an amazing automobile. It truly is. But about the time you can afford one, you're about 75 years old, and all you want to listen to is AM radio, and you want to know where your signal lights are, and that's about all. And meanwhile, this thing is a space shuttle. It'll do anything. You can change the smell of the glove box, and the guy's like, nope, how do I get me off of this station? What's XM? I don't even know what it is.
Well, it's funny how you mentioned that. I was at BMW 2001 when they brought out the new 7 Series. And that's what started the technology wars, what I think, in the high-end cars. And I also believe that's why 7 Series and S classes depreciate so much, is because it's always cutting edge technology, but once it's out of warranty, you want to get rid of the pig.
Yeah.
But these things were so cool. And, we had a customer, this was in Edmonton, who had a biotech firm. And he had the first one in the city, the first one in Western Canada. And it was cool. And he was in the process of selling out to a big drug firm from Europe. And these guys flew in, and he's taking them out to dinner in his new 7 Series. And they're all, oh, yeah, it's a very good, nice car. I apologize if he was of German descent. And he gets, this is in winter, in January in Edmonton, he gets 2 blocks down the street, the car just stops. It just shuts down. It doesn't go chug, chug, chug. It doesn't, doesn't do anything. It just stops. Nothing's working, nothing at all. So there is this guy, and they're actually going to some gala thing or something because he's in a tux, running down the street in Edmonton at 8 o'clock on a January night, with his tuck shoes on, slipping and sliding, to go to his house to get his M5, because that's all the only other than a Z8 that he had to drive. And so it's slipping and sliding. And that car, 7 Series for the next 2 years, kept coming in on flat decks. Same thing with S classes as they brought them into it. So,
and it's funny,
anyway,
just even on just a personal note, we built a home 6 years ago, and we did the audio visual, stuff that you normally do. You build this in, you build that in. We've upgraded it twice, and that's one of the rentals we're doing. And it's just, you have to do it, because you go to even buy something, they're like, well, actually everything's 4K now, and if you want to upgrade, well, now you need a 4K TV and cable and receiver, and it's, well, that's $5,000, and it's just like, okay, you're never done with that stuff, right? It just keeps going.
And hopefully when they did the house, they put in conduit, so that way you could just pull the wires out and feed new wires through.
I did, actually. One thing I did do is I put a conduit from my utility room up to my attic. So no matter what happens, I can pull wires from the rooftop to the basement if I have to. So anyway, it's like, this never ends. One day it's satellite, then it's not satellite, then it's fiber optic, then it's not fiber optic. It's all over the place.
Well, again, I'm waiting for that big wall TV of 190 inches. Moving along to a little bit more directed question. We'll take it from here. Is so what does everybody think if dealers discover that if floor traffic, if the up bus never returns and all everybody does is send in leads or pre-configure cars or something, what are we going to do?
Ian. I just don't think that's going to happen, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm with you, John.
So what percentage do you think will return? Because I've already talked to dealers in mass lately who are just panicking about this. So their lead count is up no matter what website they have, but their guys and gals aren't as good as they could be at managing them. But their fear is that people just aren't coming in anymore, or when they come in, they're not the same as they were.
Well, I can tell you that there are people going into showrooms even today here in the Halifax region. You may or may not know, but we've had to cut back severely, where now dealers can only allow 25% of their capacity in terms of people coming in. So things have certainly slowed down. But having said that, we are going to get out of this. And quite frankly, it's going to go back to more normal than most people realize, in my opinion.
So you think it's going to go back to what it was like pre-COVID, or you think it's going to be?
I would say that it will be extremely close to what it was.
Interesting.
So here's the only thing, John, that I would say, and again, I'm just going to go on my personal opinion.
Of course.
Since this has all happened, I was never really on Zoom as much as I am now. And we've got a Christmas plan for our family. Everybody's going to meet on Zoom. And so I'm not saying that's going to be our new normal, but that is factored into it. My 11-year-old daughter, we have to remind her to take her mask off. She finds it more comfortable now to wear a mask. Where, you know, for us, we still find it annoying, fogs our glasses up and does all the rest of it. But she's very much just, we have to say, you know, hey, you can take your mask off now. And the other thing is, you know, we've started to get into this, this company called Instacart. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that or actively using it. We haven't been to Costco in 6-8 months. And so when my wife used to go to Costco, she used to wander up and down the aisles and come home with about $500 worth of stuff that we didn't even know we needed. And we got books and pajamas, we got everything coming out of Costco. Well, now we order 6 things that we want, and we spend percentages less, half as much money as we used to at Costco. And that's our new normal now. We can price shop everybody on Instacart. We don't like going on a Saturday to a Walmart grocery store or anything like that, but they sometimes have some smoking deals, and we can send someone else there. They go, they pick it up. We haven't been to an actual grocery store really outside of picking up some small stuff in months. So I'm not going back to grocery stores, and they don't get to put their gum at the checkout and have me buy gum and chocolate bars and stuff like that anymore. I'm just not doing it. So I think there is some habit changes. I'm just using my own personal side of things, that if I've changed, the consumer elsewhere has changed too. And again, to Ian's point, how much, I don't know, but I think there's definitely a change coming. And we're going to have, I think it's easier for an interrupter right now.
Well, I mean, you gotta look at that video we did the other week where I think it was Toyota New Zealand, and they were talking about how their customers didn't like dealerships. And there's an ad, I think it's running from Car Gurus, not to endorse them by any way, but it's like there's a dentist basically talking about how people like me more than like car dealers. And to your point, if they can do more of that online, if not the whole thing online, as per your Carvan or your Vroom or whatever, and they can save time and probably money at the same time, you know, they're probably not going to go back to spending a lot of time in a car dealership. That's not to say they might not go there to drive the car. They might not have it delivered to their house to drive it. They might not do it at the last step. But the trend that I see, which is really interesting, if you look historically, 10, 15 years ago, people visited 3 to 5 dealerships on average, North America. Now they visit 1, maybe 1.2. I think 1.2 is really just a statistical error. I think they choose the one dealership they're going to, and they don't go anywhere else. So the question is, how are you going to become that one dealer? That's the question.
So, and so help me with this one, Ian. Because there's good knowledge on this. Here's my struggle. Coming out of retail fairly recently.
Yeah.
You've got people that have come in on a Saturday. So you're going to put, I don't know, let's just make an easy number. You got 20 people walking through your showroom on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And you sell 5 cars, just to make numbers up.
Yeah.
So those people have gone somewhere else. So that, and I hear the 1.2, but I always struggled with, so they're going to another store, so that's automatically a 2 dealer visit.
Well,
right?
but let me give you an example, because I agree with you that that's the number, and it's probably an NADA number from statistical data. Yeah. And we all know that there's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics. So statistics is a little bit, you know, wonky depending on who you talk to. That's just the way they are. And that my statistics prof, my MBA said that, so it wasn't me saying that. But anyway,
well, he's right. So.
Yeah, you know, whatever. But the way I look at it is this: if I've got, let's just argue, 30% increase in leads, digital leads from various sources in the marketplace today. You've got a 90% I didn't sell a car to, which is what I hear in the market every day is, you know, I'd like to get to that 10 to 15% sold cars. So the question then becomes, and to your point, I get 20 people, I sell 5 cars. What happened to the other 15 people? Well, I'll use an example. I was talking to one of the largest BMW dealerships in Canada this week. I went and visited with them. They had their busiest Saturday probably in a month, and they sold less cars than they ever have on a Saturday. So what does that tell me? Well, they asked the customers, and they happen to be a large percentage of Asian Canadians, which was unusual, he said, because generally they have Indo-Canadians in the dealership on a Saturday for some reason. He said what he thinks is was the problem was they felt the Black Friday sales were going to be like early, and they were going to be like $10,000 off, $10,000, $20,000 off a BMW. And when they didn't see that, they're just not in the market. So the expectations part of it, but also if someone's physically there, what it's telling you is if everything aligns, they're going to buy a car today. If it doesn't, they won't. And they may put it off for months or years. You just don't know. So what I said to them is I said, okay, you don't have any product because BMW isn't giving you any. And the customer's expectation isn't in line with that, which is that they want basically 50% off to buy it right now. So what are you going to do? He goes, well, what do you mean? I go, well, like those two things don't align. Like there's a disconnect. And it's a disconnect because of the fact that people who are looking to buy a car right now, unless they absolutely need one, they don't need to buy it, especially a luxury car. They're going, well, the car I got's fine, right? If they're blowing it out and they're giving it away, sure, maybe I'm interested, but otherwise I'm not. So what that tells me is you had a lot of pent up demand because dealers were closed for 3 or 4 months. So all the people that needed to buy a car have done that. The question is what happens between now and January, February? That's the question.
I think it's going to be a slow winter.
Yeah.
I think these guys better
agree.
be prepared. Yeah, because there's enough uncertainty out there. The inventory is awkward. Coincidentally, we just in a Honda store we just signed up. They had nothing to actually run a sale for, so they ran a 2021 inventories arriving sale. Yeah. And actually sold some cars because there hasn't been any inventory. So they just got a message out there that says, hey, rather than buying a blue one that you don't want, why don't you get the color you want with the options you want? You know, the trucks are offloading them in our back alley now. Let's go. Obviously, I'm oversimplifying, but that was the message. And they actually sold some because of the demand that is out there. So it's kind of a little bit all over the place, but I think there's a cold, quiet winter coming for these guys.
Well, I mean, but you have a double-edged problem, which is that you have that reality, but you also have a lack of used inventory, which is the only thing that's actually moving at pace. Yeah. So the question there becomes, as a dealer, I need someone to trade in or buy a car in order to sell a new car. That's probably the new pivot point. But how am I going to get that used inventory I need just to keep the lights on? I mean, I've seen dealers. I was at a dealer in Kelowna that happens to sell Highline cars last weekend, I think it was. They had a total of 5 used cars, only one of which was their brand in inventory. That was their entire used car inventory.
Well, and I think the good dealers are going to get out of their desks. They're going to walk to the back of the building. And they're going to figure out how their dealership can function out of the drive-through because they got to keep that happening. And if I was sitting in the chair, I would be offering blowout prices on oil changes just to get the cars in so I could do an appraisal and try to sweep them into a newer model, keep their payment the same, even if that costs me money. Because if I had to write it out of my used car, you know, I'm making $1,200 in service on a used car, making 15 up front and $2,000 in the finance office. Yeah. So I might have to subsidize some of that from the front to the back, but just to keep that transition moving.
Well, there was a fascinating ad from a Dilawri store in Toronto, I think it was. I think it's a Honda store. They're having a 1-day service sale.
Good idea.
With special tire pricing. I thought that was interesting. Go ahead.
Well, here's what I have to say on this, and here's my biggest fear is this last 8 months, 9 months, well, 7, 8, depending where you were and when stores reopened, has been like sitting down, just shooting ducks. One duck walks by, you got a shotgun full of pellets, you shoot him and he falls. So what I mean by that is customer comes up, goes online and says, I want to book an appointment. They come in, they buy a car. I think the dealers in general have become lazy. I think the salespeople have become lazy. And pardon me if I'm offending anybody, because it's been really easy. And November has been a wake-up call, because in November they're all going, oh no, what do I do? And then to your point, Barry, the industry is notorious for having a 3-month memory span.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
What's the last 3 months? What's my last month? Oh, what did I do great? Well, now we've got a so-so month this month, and all of a sudden they're going, Oh my God, it's so slow. I can't get cars, but even if I could, I couldn't sell them. I can't get used because everybody wants this one and I can't get it. And I think you're right. I think, the smart ones are going to sit and slap themselves in the face and say, what do we have to do? They're already going back to the old ways here. And that is, before they discovered, wow, if we opened at 10 and closed at 4, we were doing the same amount of business if we opened at 9 and closed at 10 at night. And then they said, well, let's get back to normal. Some stores here were closed on Sundays during the height of the pandemic, we'll call it. And they were doing great business. Their salespeople were making money. Their service people were making money. Everybody was making money. Now, some of them have gone back to hiring a whole bunch of new people because they laid off the people they didn't like before. And here they are again, where they don't have a lot of people that know what they're doing and nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah. What are you seeing, John? Like you know your dealers fairly intimately, because you're in them and Are you guys doing anything different out there?
No, I mean, to Jeff's point, I think that what tends to happen is, they fall back into the same rut that they were in before. It's cyclical. It's not unusual, right? And very few at this point in time in particular want to invest in something that may be new to them, or a new concept, or a new way of doing things. It's, one of the age old stories is things are really good, so we don't need it. Things are really bad, so we can't afford it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Gee, I
And
think,
again, to Jeff's point, like too many of these guys, I always liken it to being on a boat. And too many of these guys are sitting at the back of the boat looking at where they've been. They need to get their chair and go to the front of the boat and look at where they're going. And it's just, it's comical sometimes when you watch it happen. And you're like, you could have fixed this. You could be on a completely different path by now. And the growing pains could be over. And, again, not to bang it on the same drum, but for some people and some dealers, they used COVID as a training opportunity. And they took their whole team and they regrouped their team and they restructured and they rebuilt and they put the processes that they couldn't do because they were just too busy and all that stuff. And they rolled it out and they all lifted the curtain and they were a whole new store, and away they went. And others, they just tucked in and said, I'm going to save all my money and I'm scared and I don't know what to do. And I think it's starting to show now.
well, I have to say something. We talked a couple of times over the last few days on somebody that was looking for a vehicle. And they reached out to a big dealer group out here, and they put in a lead. They actually knew somebody there. This place has 3 stores here, big stores. And they said, no problem, somebody will get a hold of you. He reached out, like they don't executive with the company. 3 days later, nobody contacted him. Called again, this time got the sales manager. I'm really sorry, we'll get a hold of you. The next day, a fleet sales manager calls them. And they start talking about it, but this whole time they're sort of like, Val, we're great, so don't worry, we'll get back to you. And of course, this is a particular used vehicle that they've moved from rooftop to rooftop and has actually been in the company for a year and a half. And they're already $2,000 overpriced on the car, and they're blowing it out. Yeah. It didn't work out because they just couldn't be bothered. Then they reached out to another dealer on something else out of town. And they did a deal. They drove all the way out there. The numbers, they made a mistake. 5 hours they drove. You know what the dealer did for them? Nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, we screwed up. I don't even think they did that. And opposite of that is an experience I had personally yesterday. Somebody reaches out to me and says, refers to me, and I need a used car. I'm looking at $12,000, $13,000 used SUV. He was a young guy, him and his girlfriend. I find one at a prestige dealership here, a 2012 11 Mitsubishi Outlander with 130K. And this is our Jaguar Bentley Aston Martin, you know, the whole that thing dealership. I reached out to the GM. I just sent him a quick message on LinkedIn. 5 minutes later, I get a message back from him. What's your number? 5 minutes after that, his GSM gets a hold of me and says, I've got it in the shop right now. Let me call you back. An hour later, he called me back. Here's the details on the car. Now that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And this is a place where they got vehicles that the people's lease payments are more money than that car. It was.
Exactly.
So
And you know, it's funny. It's funny in that story though. Not once did you say the salesperson. And so you start to say to yourself, like, and I remember those, like, you get a call from the owner and he's like, I got a guy looking for this and whatever. You don't walk that out to a salesman because you can't trust that that's going to happen. You handle it yourself and you take it as far as you comfortably can. You hand it off to a GSM, a GM, or an SM, whatever, and the deal gets done and the owner calls you in 3 days and says, how did it go with Bill? But you're not handing that off to the floor. Well, if you can't handle that off to the floor, you got a problem.
Absolutely.
And I know, John, you see it every day. So,
Yeah.
And that, I think that's the big challenge when you look at customer experience, you look at dealer visits, you look at training, you know, what's the right staffing level when, let's just say it's 70% is online moving forward. I don't know what the number is going to be. Let's just say it's 70%. What are the permanent staffing changes going to be, right? It was funny. I was getting a vehicle for myself actually, and they had a pretty good initial process. It's a group here in Richmond. I know the owners anyway, but initially they had the emails from the BDC department, I think, for the group, and then I went into the store and they got me a person. But that salesperson isn't following up. He's relying on the BDC to do that.
Yeah.
So she does all the front end work. He does the meet and greet or whatever when I physically went there. And then he's relying on the BDC to do everything else. Like he's not even connected to the process.
Well, so just a question for everybody on here, because there's a couple I don't know. So I don't know what you bring. I don't know what your history is or whatever. So I apologize. But what's everybody think of the commission style structure going away and actually just hiring people to do a job? Because I had guys when I was on the floor, they're making $1.50 and I can't get them to walk them to the service department. But I go for gas, I walk into a Shell station and the guy says, do you want to buy 3 chocolate bars for $1? Wiper fluid is on for $1.50 because that's his job and he's been told to do it. And if he doesn't do it, he goes away.
Yeah.
Like, and this commission style that we still have in our industry, I think is antiquated and it needs to move out. And I think we need to just get people that do the job well. And if they don't do the job, and there's expectations, you got to sell this many and you got to do this many turnovers, whatever, there's expectations. But this is just what you do. And if you don't do it, you don't work here. Like, I don't know. What's everybody's opinion on that?
I would agree. Like, I mean, I think, and I wouldn't say it's true in all cases. I think there are examples at every dealership where somebody working there, or a couple people working there, actually care enough to do everything right. And then I see dealerships where it's like, no one there seems to want to do anything right. So I think really, and I think John's spoken to this in the past, the way you design your comp plan matters. It does, right?
And John, did you have it where it was 2 stages where once somebody proved themselves for whatever 6 months, a year, and they were doing everything right and they were saying what you wanted them to say, then they moved to a different pay structure? I heard that.
It's entirely up to the dealership which route they want to take. I came up with a pay plan based on the fact that many dealers have a challenge hiring people new to the industry. So I said to dealers, why not take the average pay scale in your geographical area? So let's say that the average pay is $3,000 a month. So you're hiring someone new for your sales department. What you do is you guarantee that they won't make any less than $3,000 per month while they work for you. However, there are minimum standards that they're going to have to meet, and they're going to get paid based on the activities they do relative to the sales process. So, for example, someone walks in, you get the person's name, you get their phone number. Right away, just for that, you get paid. Let's say that you set an appointment, you get paid for it, even if the appointment doesn't show. If the appointment shows, you get paid again. When you sell a car, you get a flat fee, but you also get paid, for example, on a demo drive. If the person has a trade and there's an appraisal, you get paid. If there's a proposal placed in front of the person, you get paid. So for steps within the process, you get paid. And then there are volume bonuses, and then there would be bonuses based on that. If in fact at least 66.7% of your appointments show, in other words, 2 out of 3, you get a little bonus. If your closing ratio is at 50% on appointments, you get a little bonus. If your closing ratio is 35% on walk-ins, you get a bonus. If your demo drives, appraisals, proposals are at the 80% level, you would get, again, bonused on that. Then you get bonused on referrals as well. And if you win a trade, you get a bit of a bonus because it means the dealership doesn't have to go out and buy those cars and pay auction fees, transportation fees.
Well, it stops the senior guy from telling them to go sell it themselves because he doesn't want to do the trade appraisal.
Exactly. So this is primarily meant for people that are new to the business. And of course, the option can be given to anyone to get onto the program. The whole idea behind it is that the more we follow the process, the more likely we're going to sell more vehicles.
Well, there's some comments made here that I want to share with from Chrissy and from Stephen. And Chrissy basically said that, she believes that the customer gets a better overall experience and commission is no longer in the mix.
Exactly.
Commission salespeople are not inclined to do anything they don't believe will pay off immediately. And then Stephen mentioned that AutoNation a few years ago went to their sales teams across the US and offered them the option to go salary. Only 30% of the people took the option. And it's very interesting because it depends how many of these people are in there. And it's very hard for our business to say to somebody, and part of the reason we have such a high turnover is, how do you say to somebody, great, congratulations, here's a job, you don't make any money unless you sell a car.
Right.
And it also goes with, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say there's the other thing that we struggle with is being diverse with our male and female representation on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
And it's terrible. But I think one of the reasons we struggle so much with it is the commission basis, because
100%.
There are risk adverse people and there are non-risk averse people. They just want to come to work, do a job, know how much they're going to get paid, pay their bills. They're good. They do a great job, and just move on. And then, the other ones are, you got whatever. I don't want to be all stereotypical, but I think we all know what we're talking about. And, they'll have a 20-car month and then they'll take the next one off and then they'll have another big one. And, they'll stop working mid-December and they won't go back to work until about March when the car shows all hit the season. And it's just come on.
It's very funny on a positive spin on this. Wherever you go, and John, I'm sure you agree, Barry, of course, Stephen, I'm not sure where you're located, but the successful dealers are the dealers that have built a relationship with good people, either fixed ops or front end, and the ones that aren't, they're still making money in spite of themselves, but the ones that aren't are the ones that stick to antiquated models. I had a general manager of a store the other day talk to me, and he had recently, about 6 months ago, changed dealerships. And he was in one dealership where he led them to record profits ever. And the owner sat down with him and had a problem with them. They just finished their best year. The net
making too much money.
Yeah, the net was double his best year. No word of a lie, Scouts honor. And he said he had a real problem with them though. And his problem was, is he doesn't think he spends enough time at the store. And this guy came from the fixed ops background, not from the variable ops. And he was used to, he understood life as you come to work and you go home. You put in a reasonable amount of hours, not a little bit, but not a lot. And then you have a life. And he looked at him and he says, what part of record profits didn't you get? And he says, yeah, he says, you got to spend more time here. And, you know, he happened to have connections because he represented the dealership on the, to the manufacturer. Met another dealer was getting a new store. Guy said, come on board. He joined him. That store's now taken over the position the other store did. That other one's come down. And he actually puts in a 45 to 50 hour week. His kids know who he is. His wife hasn't left him. And that store's making money and the other guy's back to where he used to be, but his manager's putting in 65, 70 hour weeks.
And I think, you know, I'm sure John will reflect on this as well, but if you don't have rested management and they're fresh and they have time to think of new ideas, then you never will grow. Because you need a manager who goes into a restaurant, has an amazing experience and brings that experience back to your business. If you're just running, there's never any growth. They're just trying to shuffle papers and keep things alive. And it's, you know, and it's a mindset from a era gone by from some of these owners that they just don't understand that in today's world, that expectation needs to be, you've got rested management. And if your team can't do it without you, you're not a good manager, just to sum that off.
Exactly.
Right? If you need the GM there on a Saturday to desk deals so they don't screw up trade appraisals, you got a bad team. So
there's no question here. And I mean, one thing I say is the privateer dealership, the single point, double point dealer, did very well for years. And then somebody said, hey, you know what? I can't run my dealership with my hand around like this. I just can't. Maybe they got sick, maybe whatever. Maybe their kid came aboard and the kid said, wait a minute, mom, dad, I'm not doing it that way because you brought me up with nice cars and watches and golf club memberships. But so then they took on other dealerships and now the big groups have come because the dealerships run. And the good ones, AutoNation's a great example that Stephen brought up, is their dealerships are given a very, to my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong, they're given a parameters about this wide in which to operate their dealerships. And the GMs run them and they get either stock or whatever. I know Auto Canada does stock options here. They don't get ownership, but here we like to do it this way. And the GMs bounce around. There it's like that. You know, they can't, Ian, who's disappeared on us, and when he presents the products from NABVAT, and he'll talk to people who say, well, don't talk to me because I can't make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And so they leave that up to the salespeople, the sales manager. The GM wants to come in and desk deals on a Saturday because he can't trust his sales managers to do deals. And the reason he can't trust them is he doesn't want to.
And he's never trained them, right? Like, you know, inspect what you expect and all the other catchphrases that we've all heard in our life and et cetera. But at the end of the day, if you got a management team that want, you know, the new car guy's putting the used car guy together to put a deal together, well, your pay plan is wrong then, and you got a team issue and you got all those things going on, and they're really quite fixable once you actually dig in. They take a little bit of time, but they're fixable. But it's so much easier to say, well, no, boss, I'm here all the time, every time, so it can't be anything I'm doing. You know, it must be the other guys. And hopefully they dodge a bullet one more time and go from there.
And you know what's funny? With that model, the customers pick up on it. Mm-hmm. And they walk in and they know, you know, if they come into service and the service people are just trying to stuff them with work, flushes. I was in a dealership that we took over a dealership where on the first service, the service advisors were selling customers flushes because they could. And then it took 5 years to regain the reputation. But when you got that, or does somebody come in and they got a lot of problems with their car and the service advisor says, look, you may not want to put the money into this car. Would you like to speak to a salesperson? Or heaven forbid, there's a salesperson sitting there offering to give somebody a ride instead of the shuttle driver. And these are the things when everybody's worrying about their money, the customer picks up on it right away. And that's where we get the reputation. And Chrissy made a comment, keep that thought. But she's saying there's no doubt the industry is mostly male, but it's changing slowly. She spent most of her career doing service and was nervous when she switched to sales because she had the idea she had to be very aggressive and pushy, and that wasn't her. And she now approaches sales from a customer service perspective, and customers do appreciate that. Sorry, you were going to say, Barry.
No. I was just going to add to a comment, but to add to Chrissy's comment, I think, you know, the folks in the service drive are selling harder and more than they are in the front. And I think we don't progress them in that direction enough, where we train them in service, good customer service, all that stuff. And then we migrate them out to the front of the building. They'd already know all our staff or all our customers. And, you know, you're building salespeople back there without them really knowing it.
Well, the whole point is building people. And I think, and the scary part for me, as we said with this topic, is as the world returns to normal, hopefully, how much are we going to fall back to that? And, you know, even the case about where do the digital retailers, where are they going to fit now? You know, it's not so much in Canada, but in the States, they're talking so much about Carvana, even though they only do such a small percentage. And here we have somebody here now that does that too, but they don't have a vending machine. Who is that?
There's a bunch of different companies. There's one out of Saskatchewan that's trying. There's a couple out of, there's that group actually out of Toronto has some locations in the US now, H. Gregg, which is kind of trying that concept. And then we have another one that just launched that I was been talking to a little bit.
Isn't the Lowry doing like where they got their trailer and they're
they got the VIP, but that's not really the same model.
Oh, isn't it? Okay.
Well, that's
the company called Kirby out of Saskatchewan. That's kind of interesting. A bunch of young guys started it. And Canada Drives here is playing around with that model as well.
Well, there's somebody too that has, there's somebody there that's been promoting themselves. They literally have a flat deck tow truck, but it isn't, all painted up nicely and home delivery and the whole shebang.
Well, Dilawri's got a trailer, glass trailer, Dilawri VIP, which is kind of that same kind of idea. And of course, Genesis does a little bit of that now with, you know, like test drive at home and all that kind of stuff, right? That's kind of their model. And I think you will see as Polestar launches, which they're have a very interesting comp plan for their manager they're trying to recruit here in Vancouver, by the way. Gain bought the franchises, I think, for Vancouver, but they kind of have an interesting model too. It's going to be interesting to see when they actually open the showrooms in December, how that goes. Because I think it's a collaboration between Volvo and a Chinese car manufacturer. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys compete with the other, like Neo and Rivian and these other guys, right?
Well, Volvo's owned by that Chinese manufacturer.
Oh, they are? Okay. So
they're no longer Swedish, even though they're built there.
Well, there was an article today that Musk is exporting cars from China to sell in Europe. So that's going to be interesting to see how that goes.
So I have a question for everybody. Tesla's business model is to take nice, young, clean-cut people, not car salespeople, and are presenting them, I don't even know the term they use, but customer engagement specialists. And they're not salespeople because frankly, they can't sell anything. What do you think is going to happen? I got a feeling Polestar is going to go that way too. Sort of like the Apple.
I think everybody's looking at the Apple model right now, Jeff, and whatever they think and however they want to modify it for their industry, but Apple made it work. And you go in there and it's not like, oh, you talk to that guy over in the corner. Well, you got to still talk to him and I can't talk to you now. And like none of that stuff. You walk in, you find somebody in a purple shirt or whatever they're wearing, and you ask them something and they are there to help you. No problem at all. We'll get that done for you right now. John, sorry.
And they have one price, right?
Yes. They have one price. They have like it. Our industry needs to just get on board and move on. Like it's
right.
Just comical Here's the price. This is how much it sells for. I spent 10 years of my life with Saturn and on the sales floor. And I tell you, it worked wonderfully. You'd sit down with a customer and they'd say, really, there's no negotiating? You'd say, really, there's no negotiating? And
No need
their
to.
shoulders would just drop and they'd be like, okay, let's buy a car now. And that's all. Like, it was, honestly, once you got over it. Now we're selling plastic cars for at 6.1% for the same price that they were doing Cavaliers for. So we had to be pretty good at what we were doing. But
Well,
anyway.
there was an article on Saturn at that time that said something to the effect of, listen, they're not rocket ships, have six wheels or nuclear power. In fact, they're pretty mundane, middle of the road or worse quality cars, yet they have the highest customer satisfaction. Why?
People
is
loved
that?
them. Yeah.
The
like, just-
experience.
they loved the process, loved the experience. They loved everything, but we did everything similar to what, we had a proper delivery process. We made a big deal out of it. We made, people were happy with it. And it was, again, in that late 90s, that was when they were just rocking. And if they could have carried that model over, and Toyota had a bit of a grasp until I think it was a dealer in Calgary that decided not to jump on board. But and it's going to be successful in New Zealand because they've got that controlled petri dish that they can work with, right? And it'll be a model for the rest of the world. When it starts working there, it's going to be attractive.
Which
It's funny you
manufacturer in
mentioned-
Australia?
Yeah, go ahead. Stevie,
I was
yeah.
going to say, it's funny that you mentioned us needing to change. I think it was 2 summers ago, I took my kids on vacation to DC and we went to the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
Inside the Smithsonian, they have a dealership from the 1950s.
Wow.
It looks identical to every dealership I've ever walked in the United States, except for computers. Like, it was such a glaring moment for me as a car person. Like, we haven't changed the physicality of our buildings in 80 years.
Exactly.
And we wonder why consumers walk in and are like, gee, this feels odd. I feel like I'm like, this is crazy. Right.
But the manufacturers have us putting bigger tile on the floor, so that helps.
Yeah. Bigger windows. But it was really like, holy cow, no wonder we are antiquated.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know
And
what?
it's just,
so
it's a huge
true.
issue.
But I have to say, we're dressing better now.
In some cases.
That was the other thing. They were all wearing fedoras. So that was the other difference.
Yeah, there you go. And
I
then
think
came the
also,
60s.
I had a startup that was a training app for salespeople inside a dealership. And one of the things that really I used to talk about is like, it's hard to blame internally because the guy that's in the tower, he started selling cars and there was a mid-level manager above him that told him this is how you do things. Then he became the manager, right? And so
Yes.
they don't really know anything outside that. And I worked for a group here. I'm in Austin, Texas, and I really admired the owner because he realized that. Like, he said, I want to change the experience, but I'm a car guy. Like, the only change I know is car stuff. And so he hired his best friend to come in and kind of reshape everything. And he was from Dell. And he was like, look, the real world outside of the car business. Can you come in and take a look? And it was really interesting because they did make systemic changes. And you could feel it when you walk into one of their stores. And it was really interesting because the guy was like, when he came in and started asking questions, well, how do you do stuff? He was like, this is the craziest thing ever, right? Just from a non-car person. He was like, why do you do this way? And it's just, I think there's a Harvard study. It's like the yellow cord. And it's kind of always reminds me of the car industry. It's like some new employee comes to a business and there's a yellow cord across the floor and everybody's just walking over it. And he asked, what is the cord? Why is everybody walking over the yellow extension cord? And everybody just says, well, because nobody knows. Like, they just, right? Nobody knows what the cord's for, why it's there, but everybody just walks over it. And I think we have such that syndrome in our space a lot of times. Like, oh, the shiny new thing, we'll try that. But we're not really coming at the core, which is changing the experience for the consumer when they come into a dealership.
Tremendous point.
Well,
And it's interesting because down where you are is the same as up here. It's the exact thing. I've talked to dealers. I talked to dealers in South Africa, and they use similar terminology. They don't use the term home run. They use a cricket term. They still use roaches, and they still use they don't use hat trick either. They have something else, but literally it's the same.
You never
thing.
see the guy at the Apple store, the Apple Genius guy, high-fiving another guy when they sold 3 iPads,
Exactly.
right? It's not,
Exactly.
oh, I just crushed that person, and the
Right.
person's still in the building. You're like, gee, I wonder why consumers feel weird about us.
And these are stores that, because people will come up with, yeah, but it's Apple and they're cheaper and it's not as expensive. Well, here there's a mall that they just tore down a beautiful atrium at the entrance, and they're building a $25 million Apple store right in the mall. And they're going to be paying the mall guys $300,000-$400,000 a month rent. So, dealers can't say that, well, I got different things I got to do. They sell service, they sell repairs, they sell warranties, they sell accessories and parts.
Yeah, it is no different. When you actually break it down, to Stephen's point, when you break it down and you start having
This book.
industry look at it, it's exactly the same.
Highly recommend this book if you want to understand. They're the highest gross profit per square foot of any retailer. And this book is a game changer. It's by Carmine Gallo. Highly recommend. Because I know BMW tried this with the BMW Genius and they kind of let it fall off, but this book is a game changer. Like, it really is.
I heard the
Here's the
guy
problem.
who was the kind of the vision for the store
Yeah.
podcast, and it was really interesting because we look at it now and go, oh, they crush it. That's the big. He was talking about when they first launched and how they had like a mock-up in an airport, and Steve Jobs would come over like every 3 weeks, walk through it and go, no, and like change it all. And they would be all excited. They're like, we got it fixed. And he said, this is the thing that I think about that's so crazy. They had one product when they launched, and they were terrified. The guy, he's like, internally, he's like, I was terrified because we had made this huge thing. We had one thing we could sell inside the store. And he's like, I got a call before we opened and I was terrified. And there were lines around the block, right? And it's the same thing where you think, why can't buying a car is an excited experience. Somebody touched on it.
And to your point,
it's exciting.
To your point, it's the exact same person buying that phone that's buying a Honda Civic.
Yeah.
And so this isn't some unicorn customer that they've managed to find and train. It's the exact same human being.
Well, look at the stores today in the pandemic. I was downtown Vancouver. They have a store in the mall. Even with all the challenges in their new process, they still got people lined up. Oh yeah, I gotta wear a mask. I gotta get a temperature check. I gotta sign a sheet. I gotta do this. I gotta book a time. They're still lined up. They're still like, yeah, when can I see something?
But here's what's funny with that.
It's hilarious.
You told me the other day where you went into a store.
Yeah, I was looking to buy a monitor.
No, not Apple. Because you go to the Apple store and they got security out front, they got stanchions, they got somebody sitting there saying, what brings you here before you come in the store? Let's sanitize you, let's spray you down, let's put your mask on. And then you go into the store, but they're greeting you in front. You told me you went to a store the other day. You had a dealership, you had to ring a bell at the door, wait for somebody to come in, and then they directed you to a service entrance, and you waited and nobody took care of you.
Well, it's a Lexus store.
Oh.
So right near my house, and they've got a big, on the glass on the side, they've got this big sign, Experience Amazing, that's on the glass, by the way. So you walk around, all the doors are locked. So eventually I got to the door, and there's a sign. Oh, if you want to come in, call us, and we'll let you in the store. And I was like, really?
They're about to have a record month in the wrong way.
Really? Experience Amazing? That ain't amazing, dude. Like, what are you doing?
And I went with you to that store because you told me about it. And I went with Ian. We had the same experience. We walked in, and unfortunately, the salesperson that we had to greet us either was not used to having to meet somebody or just was too new, because it goes, oh, hi, welcome. What are you here for? And Ian goes, well, I want to look at some cars. Okay. What do you want to look at? And again, this is a Lexus store. And this store's got another, again, a very successful operation. And I think one of the things that is affecting us in this industry is we try something new. So we try the
For a
no
day.
haggling. Yeah, we try the Apple Store experience. Let's get everybody to wear blue t-shirts for a day. Okay, a month. It didn't work. So what do we do? All right, call Charlie, who we fired last month, bring him back, tell him we'll pay him 40%. And we go back to the old thing. It's the same old,
You know,
same old.
the one thing that jumps out in that story, back to what Stephen was saying, Jobs, who put it all on the line for that, came in and blew it up. How many times? I don't know what the number is, but say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. He was prepared to make it perfect and right. And he was prepared to have it die on his sword if he made the wrong decision with whatever it was. So he was prepared to blow it up. There is no way in any reasonable conversation that anyone with any authority has gone through the Lexus process and said, okay, I'm going to just come in as a customer tomorrow morning and just see how this works, right? There's no way he did or she did. Like, and it's just, that's where the unfortunate part is.
Well, but interestingly enough, Barry, in 2019, I went to Tokyo and then I went to Shanghai as part of my MBA. So I actually went to a Lexus store in Tokyo, owned by Lexus. And what I can tell you is the experience was vastly different in Tokyo than it was in North America. And it was nothing but respectful the entire time. Like the sales, the people on service came out from around the counter to say thank you for coming in, right? It was a completely different experience. And the thing that was funny was I also went to some car dealers in Shanghai. I went to their car museum and I went to some car dealerships. The car dealership experience in Shanghai was the same as North America. just different language, but the same thing, with the exception of QR codes and a few other things. But when you go to the Tesla store in Tokyo or the Lucid store in Shanghai, those stores are very similar as they are here, right? So it was kind of interesting to see that high-level experience is possible if you insist upon it. And I think we had this discussion on a previous show, like if McDonald's said, okay, you can make the hamburger any way you want. You don't want to put pickles on it, we don't care. You bought the franchise, do whatever. That's basically what we do in North America with car dealers. Like, yeah, as long as the signage says General Motors, like whatever, like sell cars, all the best.
Well, and it's funny you say that because, one of the good examples is a restaurant industry. And there's obviously going to be different restaurants north and south of the border. But if you go into a restaurant that actually sits you down and it's a franchise restaurant, the napkin is in the same spot, whether you're in Austin or you're in Vancouver, and the glass is in the same spot and the coffee cup is in the same spot. That is how you set a table in that franchise. And to Ian's point, we just kind of let it go wingy and say, okay, here's all your plates and dishes, do what you want with them. And they haven't, there is no really clear process of this is how it's going to happen.
Oh, but you have to buy the tiles we tell you got to buy.
Yeah, those tiles are
And the
important.
color.
Tiles are an amazing one. I love that one.
And iPads everywhere. Have you seen the new Nissan look? Wow.
Well, here's the perfect proof about this whole thing on this business. The Saturn model did exceptionally well. People were happy with, and they were crummy cars. Let's not kid each other. And even Teslas right now, they're not that great a car, but they're happy. But guess what? The first opportunity GM had to look at what do we do here, they cut Saturn and they kept Buick.
Yeah. And what was interesting is like the owner was making at that point, and we're going back, 25 years, he was making, I think, $1,600 per copy easily, plus all the other stuff that we were doing at the time, whether it was F&I or whatever the case may be. But that was just a given. He knew that if he sold 80 cars, it was going to be this much gross. It wasn't, well, we'll see, or they held a sale, or they did this, or they blew a bunch of cars out because they were behind target, or whatever the case may be. That was just the number, because that's how much gross was built into the car.
$13,000 cars.
Yeah, we're selling $12,000 to $15,000 cars. Like he was rolling it, loving it, right?
But
An interesting comment from Christy. General decline in the customer-centric attitude. And I would tend to agree that you know, when I bought cars 20 years ago, and I've been in the business over 20 years, I found that there was a little bit more focus on the customer than even there is today. Like, I would say that the reason people have gone online isn't just COVID or isn't just the internet. It's that they just genuinely don't feel the salespeople add enough value.
Yeah.
They just don't add any value. It's like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to get beat up by a salesman. They're going to try and charge me 6 fees and overcharge me for the car and undercharge for mine. I mean, I was looking at a dealership website last night. It happens to be a BMW franchise. They have 4 fees on their website. No, 1 fee. They got 4 random fees. There's a finance fee, an admin fee, an F&I fee, and then a handling fee on used cars. But the thing that was funny wasn't that. It's like, oh, our offer is $1,500 in free payments, but we're paying for it by charging you all these fees.
Yeah. Well, you know, I had a friend of mine who referred to them as hot dog fee.
Yeah. I mean, $1,500 in fees, and you're giving me 3 payments worth $1,500. Okay, so you're basically not giving me anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and if you went to that said, sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I'm hearing all my stuff from my pitch deck to investors from my training app. But what I used to say that was really interesting, and I worked for Carfax for a long time, so that's where part of my brain comes from. But like, if you think about the technology out there on the consumer side, you said something like Carfax, Kelly Blue Book, Edmunds. There's tons of companies who've done a great job of educating consumers about buying a car and technology in a car. But when you go into a dealership, nobody's done that on the dealer side. Like, there's no technology. Like, a CRM is not a training tool. It doesn't make me a better salesperson. No. So to your point, like, when a customer comes in, they are so much better educated about the product than the salesperson, and experience, because they know financing rate, like they know everything because technology's helped them. And so, yeah, the salesperson is like, right?
Check out this app. It's called TD Wheels from TD Bank. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And so,
I mean, it allows you to build your own car deal on the app and then give them the financing.
Right.
It's like unbelievable. I'm looking at this the other day. I'm showing it to a finance manager. I said, you need to know about this. She goes, why? I go, because they don't need you anymore. They can select their car, get a trade value. They can select the new car. They even know which brand to buy because they get better rates. They have better rates on new cars sometimes than the manufacturer. It's insane. And you can do it all in an app in the store.
And Stephen, it's interesting you say that, because I was on the floor when some of this technology started to roll out. And the whole culture, and Jeff's nodding his head, the whole culture was, how do we fight it? How do we beat it? How do we get around it? How do we ignore it? Whatever the thing was.
How do we not take those tests? Can we pay someone to do that for us?
But I worked for Carfax for 12 years, and I was dealer facing for large groups. And it was really interesting, the arc. Like, when I first started, we just started getting accidents, and dealers, exactly what you said, like, they would fight. Why are you putting this? Stop putting this. And by the time I left, they were yelling at me because we weren't putting enough information about the accidents on the reports. I was like, wow, things sure have changed. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was.
And so the culture of the higher level is still that, how do we fight this? How do we trick them into it? How do we tell them about the fees? How do we not tell them and put it into the financing? And how do we do all these things behind the scenes? And, you know, all the stuff that we're all accused of, or our industry's accused of. And, you know, we've been trying to fight this for so long. And meanwhile, the customer's just like, I'd just like to buy a car, please.
Well, yeah, like, Chrissy had a really good comment. Product knowledge is something that I could see improving if there was a move away from commission sales. The customer wins. The salesperson, you know, obviously would then be better prepared because they're not panicked about, I got to make a living, right? I mean, when you think about Best Buy or Apple or whatever, they're not really incentivized that much to sell 20 iPads, even though there might be some sort of bonus. They're doing it because they believe in the brand, right?
And
Which I think is the same reason people do it at Tesla, right? They're selling Teslas not to make money. They're doing it because they believe in the brand, right?
And when Best Buy went away from their commission basis,
yeah,
I know I can speak for it. The customer service went up huge. You can now go in and find somebody and talk to them. They're not out back having a smoke. And you know, there's no money in TV, so there's nobody standing in the TV section. They're all standing in the warranty department.
Yeah.
But now they've got these people and they're all very educated. They know their stuff. They're willing to help you. They'll answer your stupidest question in the world and they'll sell the product. And that's just their job. You know, the other ones moved away where I don't know where they went, maybe to the car business, but
The
you know,
brick. The brick.
right. So,
The never never brick plan, you mean? Yeah. They chase you around the store in the brick.
Well, Stephen, just so you know, up here, there's a furniture chain called The Brick, and they're not nationwide. There's a few stores in probably some northern states, and I can't think of a furniture place down in your neck of the woods, only because I just don't know them. But it might as well be a car dealership. Literally, they turn salespeople over every week. You walk in and you ask them what's so good about that sofa. They don't know. And as somebody said, everybody has the same experience. You walk in the door, somebody walks up to you with a clipboard, goes, "Hi," and then you just say, "Just looking," and they follow you 15 feet behind you everywhere you go.
well, because their structure, Jeff, is the fact that that is your customer. And if you don't, like, it's not the fact they buy, they don't buy or anything. You own that human being, that up, whatever you want to call it, until they walk out of the store. And you're back in line again, and you better make that one work.
Yeah, every week the brick has the biggest sale of the year. It's laughable.
Yeah.
The tent sale.
The best sale of the year every week. Lowest prices.
Yeah, they're like the carpet going out of business sale.
You know what? All I can think of, first of all, two comments. First comment I can make, how do you lose a car dealer or a car salesman from your conversation? Use the word algorithm. Because that's what all the trainers come in and teach us. Dealer socket, dealer FX, excuse me, Ian, sorry.
Yeah.
You know, everybody comes in and says, well, we have, and I'm using my best
AI.
Midwestern accent, we have these great algorithms that sit there and search everything for you, that we can make this thing happen for you guys.
Yeah.
You know, and the second thing, though, is everything we're talking about here today is described by the badger.
I'm gonna get me one today.
Did you see
You
the
know,
new one?
I don't know what the Johnson Group spent on that, but the stickiness
Brilliant.
of that campaign has been amazing.
What's
Did you
funny
see
is
the new one? There's some group that's got a new one that looks like the Herb Tarlick, the car salesman or something they're doing.
Yeah, I've seen that
Yes.
one.
Yeah.
we used to handle them at Carfax, and the guy that was the rep that dealt with them. One time I was in a meeting and I was telling them how great, and they were like, "Yeah, it's great, but nobody knows who we are." Like, everybody in the car business remembers how funny the Badgers ad, but you're the first person. Like, I've asked people, "Well, what dealer was it?" And they're like, "Oh, I have no idea."
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I've ever heard that actually knew the name of the dealership, and they're like, "Yeah, we spent all this money. It was great. All the car people loved it, but nobody remembered who we were."
But what about the trunk monkey? What about the
Love the trunk monkey.
trunk monkey is great.
But it's true though, like to your point, Stephen, to be able to pivot on spending that money and be able to build on it, because somebody pulled the budget too soon. They built it, they did fantastic, but if they would have stuck with it another 6 months and ran with it, they would have actually got some traction. And then the viral part of it comes out, and all that stuff happens, right? So
Well, that's what Car Gurus is basically doing, is they're building on that. They're saying, okay, do you hate these things? Whether it's Car Gurus or Carvan or whatever, they're basically building on that negative cloud and saying, listen, why would you want to do it that way? It's so old school. I mean, to your point about the Smithsonian, like, there's a great opportunity for a car dealership. Like, the reason we change things is because of this, right? Like, I was in this museum and I saw my car dealership and I said, that's not my car dealership anymore. Right?
But you listen to our comments and you discover, and Stephen, you were bang on here. We aren't any different today, except right now we have COVID and you have to bring a doorbell or call somebody to let you in. And Apple, I don't know, Apple's what, the second most valuable company after Amazon? Yeah. They got some nice clean cut kid out front.
Who knows what they're talking about?
Yeah, I'm starting to see a lot of guys looking like Barry, that are at the Apple stores, handsome.
You're that old now?
Handsome 30-year-olds. Yeah. But, actually I'm seeing guys that look more like me there. And they're talking words I don't understand, but You walk in and yes, they're in a mall, but who cares? But you come up and somebody greets you before you enter the door. And in the old days, they greeted you at the door. They didn't say, oh, there's a salesman, my up. And somebody comes running out to you and two people tripping over each other.
But it's
Well, and the funny,
appropriate because if you look at Microsoft, granted, I don't think they execute as well, but at least they had, some sort of execution there, right? There's nothing to say you couldn't take that concept, Tesla, Rivian, whatever you want to call it, and make it into a store. And I think they're 100% right when it comes to smaller stores. You don't need these massive Taj Mahals full of cars. Like, nobody wants to look at your entire inventory in one place. Like, nobody, right? They want to look at the one or two cars they might be interested in, maybe, right? I mean,
I think it's a great conversation because I think the other thing we're starting to see is like GM and Ford I think started it, but a while ago these manufacturers had two cars. They had a big car, they had a small car, and they had an SUV, whatever. And now they got 87 different models everywhere in between. And you got $1.50 between them all. And the consumers and then Toyota says, well, shit, if they're doing it, I got to do it, and this doesn't end, right? So I think there's a couple of things that really our industry needs to fix, and it starts with the customer service experience, and helping that customer actually walk them into the product.
Well, look at the Kia store. There's a Kia store a couple blocks away from me. They had a new car showroom, and then now they're having an EV showroom they're building. So they're going to have like a customer experience EV showroom. So I think it's interesting if as they switch to EV, will they learn? That's the question, because EV is going to definitely impact ROs and service business, and it's definitely going to impact customers because the cars are quite expensive. So are you providing that highline experience, say at a Kia or a Hyundai store, where you're selling a bunch of electrics, or Volkswagen? I mean, Volkswagen just made this deal for batteries, but there's going to be a big change in the cars that are available, right, for these companies.
And I think the EV buyer is a more savvy and has higher expectations than what most car dealerships are giving right now too. I would say we don't do a lot of electric out here just because of our climate, but I would say that that's a big part of that. More of an early adopter, looking for that experience, not necessarily the product, but the experience.
That's Vancouver for you in a nutshell, because there's more take-hands on the road here right now than there are in the city of Vancouver than there are F-150s. And they're $200,000 a pop.
Well, the
final thing I want to make on this is the reason that we keep doing what we keep doing in this business is it keeps working.
Yeah.
Well, we keep getting away with it.
Right.
Good point.
But so I was going to, just to kind of bounce off that, Jeff, a little bit, I was going to say, so you take the money, you set it up, and you do everything, and you got your trained people, and they're not on commission, and all the things we've talked about over the last, and it's been a great conversation, guys. Thank you very much. But all those things, and then your guy across town is cutting you by $1,000 a car. How long does it take before you start saying, well, I do have to move some inventory at some point. I can't run a Goldilocks dealership and not sell cars.
Yeah, or it's $200 a car. Forget $1,000.
Whatever. Just whatever it is, right? And that's where we always get in trouble. Is at some point somebody has to say we're either all in or we're not.
Well, but Barry, I'll use the example. I managed a Kia store actually. And the owner had a philosophy where they pay a flat commission. I think it was like $400 or $500 no matter what the car was sold for. So the negotiation was all up to the sales manager. And what was surprising me when I managed that store was the salesman is still trying to grind me on the price, even though they made the same money no matter what I sold it for. And I said, why are you beating me up, dude? And they said, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm paying you either way. Like, what? In what universe are you trying to make me sell it for less? Like, what does that make sense? It was so ingrained in their head, right? It was like, no, like it ain't about the price, man. You're getting paid. Don't worry about it. But they were so fixated on the price sold the car. And I think that's something we have to fix in the car business. I mean, it's not like the people at Tesla out of the gate said, well, yeah, we'll blow it out if you buy 5. Like they're not doing that.
Yeah.
And
it's funny
long term they might have to, but what that proves is that you don't have to do that, right?
You don't have to. And I take it back to when I was at Saturn. and we were doing everything at level pricing, and nobody on the floor had sold cars before. And so again, there was no negotiation, so that part didn't matter. It was, do you have a blue one or a black one?
Yeah.
But there was nobody that would come in, and they purposely hired people that had never been in the car industry.
And maybe that's the answer. The answer is the old car dogs that are running these stores. Maybe the answer is that they're the past. I mean, I hate to say it because I've been in the industry such a long time, but maybe that's the reality, is that when you look at Tesla, you don't see a lot of old car dogs running those stores.
But the problem now is that training, when you don't have to work, the way we train new people, because let's not kid each other, I'm sure even in Texas, Alberta, Nova Scotia, 30 to 50%, maybe even 70% of salespeople are brand new to the business, no matter where you are. And the problem that we do is when we do in a standard dealership, we train them. Well, here's some product knowledge, but you know what? It really doesn't matter. Here's the process, but bottom line is just go get the up and bring them to me. And that's how they learn. Whereas if you're a Saturn or a Tesla, when somebody says to you, how does the ludicrous mode work? They say to you, well, what they do is it changes the computer algorithms, it and they get the answer. And yes, unfortunately, Tesla is owned by Tesla. Every store is owned by Tesla. If they go to the one downtown, the one in the suburbs, they get the same experience, but they have new people just with Saturn. But with everybody else, it's new people, but they screw them and destroy them because they teach them to be a liner and a closer.
Look at it this way. Years ago in the Greater Vancouver market, most of the Mercedes stores were owned by Mercedes Canada, and that's still true in the GTA. Did that change the process for the customer when the manufacturer owned the stores?
Yeah, I don't think it did.
It didn't.
No.
We would have customers, because I set up their call center, where the customer would call and they'd say, oh, where's the best deal on a Mercedes-Benz in Vancouver? And the call agent would go, where are you located? Well, I'm located here. Okay, the closest store is the best deal. They owned all the stores.
Really?
And that they also shared a CRM.
Yeah.
And what I discovered, people there, somebody came in and they meet the salesman downtown, and they were in the one, in Richmond, which is a suburb of Vancouver, Stephen. And John, you know where Richmond is. And they'd enter him into the CRM as they're talking to him at their desk, because they did that. Oh, so when you spoke to Joe over in downtown, what happened there? And it actually worked.
Yeah. They were all on 180, so they could all see everything. They could see the deal they built. They could see absolutely everything. Exactly. I mean, that's when I was with Mercedes as well, because they were trying to tell us that was their best practice. And it's like, well, that works if you got all the stores.
But now they sold all 4 stores to one group here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Toronto, I think, is the last one left. But the thing that was funny when I worked with that group, because we set up their call center, was the corporate guys went crazy when they'd visit the stores, because they'd hired all these retail guys to run the stores, and they didn't agree with the corporate guys. So the corporate guys would come in and go, well, this is important, and the coffee's important, and the Danishes are important, and this and that. And the guy's like, no, what's important is selling cars, dude. Like, that stuff's cool. Like, we got a Taj Mahal, get it, but that doesn't matter. It was interesting, because even in a perfect storm where you could have fixed it, because you own the locations, you could have docked it. You could have said, listen, this is how we're going to operate. Even then, they couldn't do it.
And frankly, the person that got the deal there at the old Mercedes stores was the person, you know what, we like to say they built the relationship with them, and they certainly did. But it's the one that wrangled the best circumstances for the customer.
Yeah.
It wasn't because they did the exact same process, which they didn't, but the benefit they had is they said, why didn't you buy in downtown? Well, they wouldn't give me enough for my car. Car salesman, well, what it would take to earn your business today?
Well, I mean, it was funny, Jeff. We were talking about Highline dealers. Even the Porsche franchises, which I'd argue are probably some of the best experience-based, in theory, franchises and most profitable out there in the market today. Even those franchises have inconsistencies, right? And it's not like it's a cheap franchise to buy, but there's inconsistencies between different locations. Even.
Oh yeah,
pricing.
I think one of the things that goes,
and everything is different. right?
One of the things that goes back to is what Jeff was talking a little bit ago when we were talking about training, and I think John will agree with this, Stephen, I don't know, but is that not only do we say, you know, there's your desk, there's the keys, here's our test driver, good luck with it. We also let the senior guy train the new guy. And that is a catastrophe happening because he's setting that new guy up to help him. And he's telling him how the up system works in his favor. And he's training them all completely backwards. And the dealer's like, did you sit with my senior guy? He sells the most cars. He'll train you on how to do all this. And meanwhile, he's just setting them up for catastrophe. And I think that's a
where's
big
the
part of it.
manager?
Not to mention that the guy's picking up his dry cleaning and his coffee.
Right? Got his Timmy's going on. He's got everything happening.
Oh my gosh. Wow. You know what? We're wondering what the industry needs to do. And we're describing all this stuff. It's phenomenal. And it's no different. I saw Stephen laughing. We hear John's comments. And the Ian and I, and you two gentlemen, well, Barry, you're not that far from here.
And Chrissy.
We couldn't be farther apart.
Well, we got North America covered technically.
Where's Chrissy based?
Chrissy's in Kamloops.
Okay.
There you go. Now, if
So,
I
yeah.
could throw something in, you know, we're talking about customer experience, and I think that's great because the customers deserve a great experience. But until we really focus on some culture change and the employee experience, I'm not sure we'll ever get to the customer experience that we really want to get to.
We won't, John. And the struggle we have is, you know, especially, and I'm reflecting from a GM position, is the guy at the top usually it doesn't have the appetite that really to change it. That's not how he did it. That's not how he got successful. That's not how this happened. That's not how that happened. When I was on the floor, this is what we did. And we did this, and we did that, and all this other garbage. Meanwhile, it was 80 years ago or whatever it was, back to your Smithsonian. And, you know, but at the point, somebody has to say, no, we need to blow this up, change it. And one of the most successful stores I was at was owned by a dentist.
Sure.
And his perception of how customer service looked from the service perspective, everything was, it was a dental office. The recall was there, the confirmations were there. He'd been doing it for 20 some odd years. So he was blowing everybody away. Just this amazing customer service. And, you know, we had everything. We had a concierge phone service for after hours and to dispatch, they had the authorization to dispatch a tow truck or a taxi, and we would pay for it. But he knew that car was on our lot now. And so it wasn't going to the closest Honda store. It was going to our store. Even if we had to pay for a taxi cab and a tow truck, we didn't care. We were going to get that car in our possession, get it to our body shop, do whatever. And he had it figured out, and it worked. Like, it was just amazing. Customers were blown away. You know?
And if there wasn't an industry that people wanted to go to less than a car dealer, it's a dentist.
Oh,
They had to reach out to him every 6 months. Oh, it's time for your cleaning. And then when they saw him, as they're opening up their mouth and they're sitting there with the thing in their jaws going, hey, they're saying, oh, by the way, you know, we need to change your brake pads on your molars. And I think we need to flush your bicuspids here. And you go, okay, I'll heck it.
So I had a really interesting conversation with an eye doctor a few months ago. I don't know what the number was. And they are all looking at the dental and the car world as what can they do for upsells, because the industry has trained everybody that once a year you get your eyes checked. I see we're all wearing glasses here. You get your eyes checked once a year. You can go anywhere you want. They do the exact same test everywhere. So the retention, unless you're amazed by them, is zero, or could be zero. I should be careful on that. So they're looking for other stuff. And the first thing they're attaching themselves to is this thing called dry eye that nobody has ever really had.
yeah.
But we're starting to see billboards. We're starting to see all this stuff. And they go to their 20 group dealer meetings or whatever they do. And they're like, nope, dry eye is the next thing. Ask everybody if they've ever experienced dry eye, because you have a treatment for it. And so that's where they're chasing now, because their business model has been really kind of.
And they went through 15, 20 years ago what we're going through now with digital, with laser surgery.
Yeah.
Because 15, 20 years ago, everybody in 20 years was not going to need glasses. And we're all wearing glasses.
We're all wearing glasses.
But why aren't they selling insurance? I think they should sell insurance for when glasses get scratched or whatever to cover that. Replace
There's an opportunity there.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I buy these glasses, I pay $400, whatever it is. Sometimes it's covered, whatever. And then a year later, I scratch the crap out of them, even though they got that scratch coating, whatever the hell that is. And you know, I just want it fixed, dude. Like,
well, you know what's funny though, and their business is probably 60% insurance.
well, yeah. I mean, why would you not sell it? So, has this happened to you before, Mr. Customer? You know, the screws came out, the lens got broken, your kid jumped on it, whatever. You know, you need a new set of glasses. They're $400. You can only get one set a year from your insurance. What if I could replace those at no cost or with a minimum deductible? Is that something you'd be interested in? Absolutely. People would sign
So here's
up
the
for that.
here's the interesting thing, Ian, because that's a fantastic thought.
Yeah.
You could actually have loaner glasses ready in every prescription because there's only so many, right? So you come in, you drop your glasses off, they give you a new pair, you walk home. You're not
Only
doing this for
problem
a
is
week.
it looks like this.
I think we've all just come up with a
Opportunity here.
new business.
But like my
Right.
optometrist, when I was getting to 50, and he goes, I said, when do I get readers? He goes, when your arms aren't long enough. I'm like, dude, that's an opportunity to sell them to me right now. Like, what do you mean my arms aren't long enough? What are you talking about, man? It's hilarious. Yeah. So that's their opportunity too, is all these guys who got laser surgery 10 years ago now got to buy readers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good time.
And actually the laser surgery is sort of like, I can't think of stuff in the car business, but you got to come back and do it later.
But you have to do one eye at a time because they don't want to make you blind, 100% blind out of the gate. Just in case they fuck up.
Yeah.
I find it interesting how these different industries are looking for products, looking for procedures, looking for.
Yeah, I talked to a nurse on a plane years ago. They were doing a CSI thing for nurses in the US. Like they were rating them and it was impacting their pay. I said, well, don't worry about that. We've been doing that in the car business for years. You can work those. She goes, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you know, you don't actually, they're not actually expecting you to solve everyone's medical problem on the first visit, are they? She says, yeah. I'm like, yeah.
Like, have you
It's never
ever
going to
known
happen.
anything? Have you ever known any business, any person, anything, even your wife or husband, that's 97% satisfied with you?
Well, it was the same.
I have pretty
CSI
good
as the
days.
car business. It was like a service CSI, but for medical. I was laughing at it.
Yeah.
I was like, really? Wow.
We even get them from Starbucks now.
Really?
You remember? Yeah. How was your experience? I had one experience at a Starbucks where it's 15 minutes to when they're closing. I'm meeting a buddy for coffee. It's 10 o'clock or 9:45.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden over the speaker, they blast the song at closing time. It's like we're in a bar. And we're sitting there, and of course they start loudly cleaning up. And then 5:02, I couldn't take it anymore. We get up to leave. I go up to the girl and I say, you know what? If you had just come to us nice and said, hey guys, we're closing in 15 minutes and this company's too damn cheap to pay us overtime, just so you know, we would have happily left. Now they're going to hear from me.
Yeah.
Funny enough, the next morning in my inbox was a survey. So
on that, like that CSI started, and again, I was with Saturn when it started, and they were one of the first ones to do it, JD Power and all the other stuff that was going on. But they refused to make it public knowledge. So really, it's absolutely useless for doing a good job. Like honestly, it isn't. They need to hold it accountable. They need to say, okay, you need to have a Google rating of this, you need to have a Yelp rating of this, you need to have this, whatever the thing is, there has to be something. But they got to get out of the CSI business because it is so backwards that you have to have this 100% that like me, to Jeff's point, no one's ever going to be 100% happy with really anything. And that does not reflect to the customer. So you do an amazing job. As a matter of fact, at the Honda store, I printed it out because we were the top in our zone by quite a bit. I printed it out, blew it up, and put it in my service drive. And the next time Honda was in my store, they were like, you got to take that down. You can't have that up there. I'm like, well, it's my score. I've worked hard on
it. What was the reason?
Well, part of it was I had all the other dealers on there too.
Don't go here. These guys suck.
That was part of it. They had an issue with me doing that. So
they didn't like you beating up on all the low-hanging fruit, eh?
Exactly. But it's just funny. There's so much of that, CSI, CSI. And if they just said, hey, here's the base rating. If you had you got a star rating here and you got a Yelp rating here, whatever the different things are in the industry. And once you got that, we'll just leave you alone. Just stay there.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I look at things like CSI or lease retention or service department, whatever. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, so if you have those people that are the bottom of the list, what are they doing? Are they penalizing them? Are they going in and looking at the process and seeing why it's broken? No, they're just going, you should improve the numbers. Okay, like they're not really arming the dealership with the why. Because they probably don't even know. They're just asking the questions, right? They're like, yeah, well, we want our customers to be happy. And realistically, it isn't even about that so much. These are the same organizations that can't get the dealer to even follow their sales process.
Yeah.
It's funny. Here's how important CSI is. And I can only speak for Canada. Chrysler stopped sending out CSIs to customers about 4 or 5 years ago. Partially because they couldn't give a damn anyways. But partially because they knew it was a totally ridiculous process.
Well, and it's funny. I think Ian, you brought this up, is that the manufacturer, when they get involved in some things that they don't understand, John, how much has your process changed in your sales process in the time you've been in business? Like, it's evolving all the time, right? You hear something new and you're like, oh, I like that. I can thread that in. We'd get Honda's trainer to come in and I'm like, this is 1985. Like, they don't have a clue. Like, they're still talking about this road to the sale and all kinds of things. And, they're not about transaction ready customers, and they don't believe anyone coming in is ready to do that. And then they send the customer a survey that says, did they do a 12-point walk around? No, because the guy had his credit card out, wanted a blue one.
Yeah, exactly.
Sold him a blue one.
And the fact is the customer knew everything about the car and the salesman didn't.
Yep.
Well, yeah. I mean, I participated in the Honda walk around contest when I sold Hondas. And I got to I think the finals or the regional final or something, right? So we had like 3 guys, I guess, from all over British Columbia or Western Canada or something. So they had these idiots from Honda Canada, nothing wrong with Honda by any stretch. But they said, okay, well, here's the customer profile. I said, okay, so what you're telling me is I'm going to sell this walk around to an imaginary customer in a contest about excellence in walk arounds. They said, yeah. I said, can't one of you guys from the Brain Trust play the customer? Oh, we don't do that. I'm like, what do you mean you don't do that? Like, right? what kind of process is this? Like, it was ridiculous. It was so absolutely silly.
Which goes to show that the dealers aren't on the same page as the manufacturers, who aren't on the same page as the customers, who aren't on the same page as the suppliers. And my favorite punching bag, and I'm just joking because he's done way better than me, is because of this, Grant Cardone gets a new plane every 2 years.
Yeah.
The giant 10X, except of course John's soapbox racer with the 1X on it.
No, it is. There is such a space there, and especially get into the U.S., some of those big groups and some of that kind of stuff. That the fight that goes on between the OEM, the dealer, and the customer, it is not a seamless field in any way, shape, or form. Like, it's just atrocious, and everybody's sneaking around the other guy's back trying to find information that they shouldn't have, or hopefully not let them know that we're doing it this way, and all the stuff that's going on. And they got aftermarket parts selling as OEM parts out the front door, all the stuff, and it's just like, it's a big fight at the end of the day. And I think at the end of the day, that's probably where some of this starts to circle around to, is when you walk into an Apple store, you're getting treated properly, you're paying a fair price, and you're buying a good product, and you're good doing it. You're good.
And it's funny, even at the manufacturer level, the reps, so a dealer's sitting there and they're missing target, quota, whatever acronym that they use, and the rep says, well, look, just RDR a couple of those RDR a couple of those Elantras and just get it through, and don't worry about it, and put the money against it. And listen, on the CSI, just send some out to your brother or cousin. Just get them up. So everybody's, it's all about who can we fool. And in the end, everybody gets hurt. The customer, we've always said, I've said my whole career, which has been a lot longer than I want to admit to, the customer doesn't remember what they paid for the car a month or 2 months after they bought the car, even though they spent 6 weeks shopping dealers, be it on, well, back then it wasn't online. But boy, oh boy, they sure tell everybody what a jerk somebody was because somebody looked at them the wrong way.
Well, half of them don't remember, Jeff, because half of them don't know.
And there's only oh, by the way, the only thing they don't remember more, the price of the car, is the salesperson.
Yeah.
Big bald guy. Yeah, bald guy. Nice, kind of boisterous guy. Don't know his name.
It's one of the processes we put in at one of our stores too, was when we stopped leaving that to the salesperson, and at the end of a delivery, the service department called the customer and said, you know what, we're just going to take over from here, because this whole transaction of handing a customer back to service is a broken thing. And yeah, I introduced them and all this kind of stuff. It's like, whatever. But the sales or the service department would just call and say, how was your drive home? Like, did you enjoy your first couple hours in your vehicle? Let's get you set up. Let's make sure we got your right emails, your phone numbers, all this stuff. Because the sales department did a terrible job, and they got the wife's email and they got the husband's work phone number, and it's under the company name, and it's all over the place. And the database is terrible.
We go back to the early, because they don't get commission, so they don't care.
Right. Yeah,
right, because we built that in, and it's like, but yet the manager's like, you have to do this, but 2 minutes ago you said I only get money if I sell stuff, so why would? Because they don't bigger picture, like, well, that guy might tell his cousin they had a great experience and you were great, and now the service, like, it's just again, it goes back to that weird.
And they can't figure out why they only get a 30% uptake on the free first oil change.
By the way, I just wanted to mention, I hate going to the Apple store. Like, I know we all say like Apple's great. It is like terrible. Yeah, but and yet it's like the model everybody wants to be. And I'm like, when you go in there, it's like going into a zoo. You can't find the blue kid with the shirt. Like yeah, I walk right up there and I'm like, where's the $1,500 phone that I have to wait? You take them
2 months to buy it. Yeah.
Like, that's what's crazy too about the car. Like, as the car industry, we're like, wow, they're the benchmark. Like, it isn't a great experience like all the time. You know what I mean?
It's
like,
way better than ours.
Oh, it's an interesting point though.
Right? Like,
yeah,
you're making me. I'm paying you $1,000 for this thing that you're going to make me buy another one in 6 months. But I'm okay, great, sure, right? They figured out whatever that is. It is genius, because it isn't really, when you sit back and look at it, it's really not that great of an experience. But we've bought into that somehow.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And the
That's a very good point.
What the benchmark is that it's the same experience, whatever you call it, at the one at this mall, that store. It's very similar. I think
that's probably it more than anything else. Is that,
yeah.
You know what? Somebody, John, you were on the Fixed Op Mastermind call. I knew I recognized you, and I thought maybe you might. Somebody posted on LinkedIn recently, and it was McDonald's. It was 3 brands, and it basically said the same thing. Like, oh, it's McDonald's, Starbucks, and somebody else. And it said, not the best hamburger, but people line up in my little town because the drive-thru's open, right?
Yep.
Starbucks isn't the best coffee, but to your point, Jeff, I know when I go in, I'm going to get the same Americano ristretto shots at this one.
For $9.
And I'm going to pay, and I pay $5, right?
Yeah.
But I could go to my coffee machine.
But the good point is, though, Stephen, the good point is, after 37 of those $9 coffees, you get 1 free.
So you get the syrup free. Free ones 27. Yeah, right.
Yeah, but again, it's about consistency. I think that's the thing that McDonald's does well, and also with the exception of lately when they try to be everything in a bag of chips. I think they got to stick with what works. But I think that's really what car dealers got to get down to. And the thing that's funny about car dealers, but also car manufacturers, is they're putting out these models. They didn't even know what people are driving or buying, really. They kind of do, but I think when you look at Costco, you look at McDonald's, you look at Starbucks, it's not about 50 items. It's about what items make sense that we can then train people to execute on, that then drives revenue. And I think that's one of the things Tesla, rightly or wrongly, has done well. A few models. You don't need 50 models, a few models. That's what we sell. You don't want to buy it, that's fine, right? You don't
I think
need
it's also interesting.
everything.
My
Right.
background at Carfax was handling dealer groups.
Yeah.
And I was always surprised because you think, like you guys talked about it earlier, like the whole idea, if I'm going to buy 50 rooftops, is economy of scale at some level, right? And that's why AutoNation changed the names from Power Nissan. They were like, we can save $50,000 a year on business cards if everyone's just AutoNation Nissan instead of whatever it was.
Yeah, ABC Nissan.
But yet you go into groups and it's not the same experience. You're like, how is this possible that you have this huge, and it's just not AutoNation, but it's a lot. I dealt with all sorts of groups around the country, and I was a trainer for a little while, and I was shocked when I would go in and I think somebody touched on it. You can feel that too. Like when you walk into a store that's well run, that people are happy in
Indeed.
the sales environment, you can feel that. And I worked for one that was really interesting. I worked for a store that the GM came up from the service side. And it was such a different experience as a salesperson because he didn't have that mentality of, I'm going to get, a $5,000, whatever, like I'm going to crush it on every customer. He really had a much more customer oriented, and you could feel that right down at the sales level. Yeah.
And I think it's possible. I think it's just challenging because when you look at, like, I had the opportunity to work with Henrik Automotive. I had the opportunity to work with a bunch of other big US groups. What I think is possible is if you have a structure and it's not optional. Like to me, and it was funny. I remember I was running this Kia store and I wanted all the salesmen to be there at 5 to 9 so we could have a meeting before the shift. And basically this one salesman was always late. So then I said to him, I said, okay, when you're late tomorrow, because for some reason you can't make it, get everyone breakfast. Figuring I'd teach him, to show up on time. After a week of him getting everyone breakfast, I'm like, dude, like your new job isn't to buy everyone breakfast every day. But he just didn't, the wheels weren't turning. It was like.
You know what I used to do when salespeople were late? I tell them the first time free. And I mean, you know what, if it's because literally they honestly had a flat tire, got a ticket, it didn't matter. First time they were late without it, they were free. Second time they had to sing.
Yeah,
Rarely were they late twice.
Sing or tell a joke. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, joke? No, sing because you can tell a joke. But singing was you stand in front of everybody and go, somewhere over.
But some of them might actually enjoy singing, then you'd have a problem.
No, what I was gonna comment, Ian, on, and I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but in Alberta, 5 years ago, the Home Depot franchises sucked. They were absolutely terrible. You could never find anyone. They were always grumpy. They were just terrible. And then somebody got in there, and I don't know what they did at what level, but they have fixed them. And it's an actual joy to go into a Home Depot. I was in one yesterday, and the lady was helpful. She's telling me, hey, well, I was buying some tile. She's like, take a picture of this, so when you get to front reception, or to the front till, they'll know what to do. Tell them this and this and this. But like they were just so helpful, and walking you to the aisle. I think that's in 17 by the ladders. They walk you down there. They're doing all the best practices now. So it's interesting that, and I don't know what there is in Alberta for Home Depot. Say there's 50 of them, but they've done a great job of actually turning that ship on a large scale and actually fixing it. So
well,
I think
it's
they
all
went to
doable.
Disney.
It's fixable. You just have to commit to it and do it long term. That's all you got to do. Commit.
I think that's the problem that we all have in this. Like, I love the car business. I love buying cars, selling cars. And that's what's so frustrating. It's like, it could be so much better. It doesn't have to be like this. I don't know why we have done this to ourselves, but like, that's what I think. It's funny. Like, I'm sure if somebody's listening to this, they're like, man, these guys freaking hate car dealers. I think that's why we all are like this, is because, it sounds like each one of you have done something different than the norm and tried to make your dealership better and different. And that's why it's frustrating.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, because I don't think anybody here doesn't love this business. And, you know, this is sort of like the dog that always pees on the carpet. You can't get them to stop. You don't shoot them. Maybe in Texas you do, but you know, you still love them, and you find a way around it. And the thing in the car business is we know how to make it better, and sometimes we just get so frustrated at trying to make change, because again, the other way works.
Yeah.
And one day it won't. And I mean, this is a 75, 80-year-old business model, maybe even longer, back to the, actually probably about 100 now.
More than
And,
100.
Yeah. And
Well, 'cause they were selling wagons before, right?
There are dealers in the US market, I think even some in Canada, that have been in business over 100 years.
Mm.
And some of them started selling cars when they sold horses and buggies as a side business. They weren't sure if it was going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the biggest challenge in Canada versus the States is we have such a higher penetration of dealers per capita than in the States. And we've talked about this. We have Rob Ruth on, who's coming on in a couple of weeks too. And there's this little dinky dealership between, 100 miles in each direction from two major cities. And there, what's the population of his town there, Ian? Like the 1,400 people or something?
It might be bigger than that, but he sells like 300, 400 rides a month.
Yeah. And there isn't a dealer in Canada. Well, there might be one or two that do 400 a month. And we're talking in cities of 5 million people.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing about him, and what's interesting, is that he draws from different markets, but I think he also takes the effort to stand apart. And a lot of the dealers in these big urban markets, there's lots of competitors, but they're not really taking that same effort, right? Like
It's funny when you go on his website and look at the pictures, like that building is old.
Oh yeah.
He hasn't built some flagship and put a 400-foot flag in the ground and hey, this is where we are. Like, he's running out of an old building. He's got to be making
Hold
money
on a
hand
minute.
over fist.
Hold on a minute. And I apologize in advance, Stephen. In the US, if you put up a flag, that's worth 20 cars a month.
And then every 20 feet is another car.
And then the big purple gorilla, you get at
Right.
least
Oh yeah.
6 more.
Or these guys at the front driveway.
What's funny, when I was a trainer at Carfax, we would bang on that. And then I saw a study that somebody did about the gorilla.
Yeah.
And it really, the study showed that they actually did sell more cars when they had a stupid thing on top of their building.
Have you seen these permanent balloons?
What?
They've got these balloons now in car dealers that are permanent. They last like months.
Yeah.
They're like
yeah.
installation.
Oh yeah, that's funny. There's a little town north of me that it probably has like 8 dealers on the highway. Every one of them, every car has one of those and I was like,
Yeah.
Who is this guy? Like, and so I have a buddy who's a manager. I'm like, how much are the balloons? Like, how did he all of a sudden get every one of you? And it's really funny when you drive through the town, you're like, what's going on? Yeah. It was $1,000 per rooftop for the balloons, just in case you're wondering.
The
Yeah.
hardest thing in the world is the salesman and the balloons in the morning. Because there's always that. It's always done by 2 guys. Because the old dogs, they go, oh man, I got an appointment. I got to run here quick. I got to get my car ready. And they're down in service having coffee. So the permanent balloons work really good.
Oh yeah, these things are like there's like a aluminum infrastructure, and they hang them on, and it's crazy. It's like it looked like a DNA science toy, but like the balloons are permanent. I was like, wow, that's a big commitment to balloons, man. When you're doing a permanent balloon installation. Oh God.
But you know what? It's all about that movement as they drive down the road. I mean, so tell me, down there in Texas, how many dealers still have the strings with the little twirly propellers on them?
Oh, I haven't seen those for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe
But
independent lots. You'll see them on occasion, but yeah.
I still see a bunch of independent lots here with the string lights.
I miss the poor guy who painted on the windows.
Yeah.
Big sale. I always thought that was a lost art.
We get them here at Christmas time, although I don't think they're doing a lot of business this year.
You know, it's funny. It's funny you say that, and then I got to duck off because I got to go pick up my daughter. But
Yeah, we're
funny
getting
you say
late
that
here.
because there was a time, and I'm not. There was before my time, but where we were so important and relevant, they used to paper off the showroom windows, change out the model years, and then take the paper down, and it's all this brand new, and people would come in and they'd see the new year, and it was all exciting and everything like that. And now look what we're trying to do to just get their attention.
Well, don't forget, that was back when there was a new car well, way back in the 60s, there was a new car every year, new design.
50s,
And
60s.
70s.
Yeah. And then, in the 80s, they redid them kind of, Honda used to do a new model every 4 years, no matter what.
Yep, that's
Well,
right.
now it's 8 to 10
Five,
years.
6.
Yeah. So why line up to discover that or cover your windows to say, hey, that CRV's got a backup camera now.
Well, it's funny how you take that relevance of what it was and how important you have a Chevy store in a community, and it would be a big thing when something happened, and now it's like,
Yeah, my dad grew up in in Michigan, and he tells me about like when he was a little kid, the car dealer was like a lawyer, a doctor, like he was an important member of the community. And I often tell people this too, like, because I'm sure you guys get this. If anybody knows you're in the car industry, they start banging on the car industry. And I'm like,
Yeah.
hold up, before you do that, like I live in a little town that's called Round Rock. It's north of Austin. And there are 6 car dealers. And I tell them, if you think about, they're normally the biggest employer in the town. They by far pay the most sales tax of anybody. And they usually are the biggest contributors to charity. So before you bang on the car guy, and this is the other thing I think about because I'm an entrepreneur, is like to be the guy that is willing to put $8 million into a building that because GM tells him to, like, there's no venture capital company coming in, right? Like Carvana's got all this great money, Zoom, all those guys, the guy that's starting a Chevy store, he's figured out how to raise that money on his own and taken a huge risk. So I know we like to bang on him. Like there's obviously a lot of reasoning behind why, like I'd be scared too to make change, right? Like, because again, I can't go to Wall Street or VC to get $4 million to do whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got to take off. So,
gentlemen, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you, everybody.
Gentlemen, thank you. That was a lot of fun, and glad to see you join us, Stephen and Barry and John, for your constant support. And we look forward to you next time. And we're going to make this a staple every month, end of the month show, just to do that. And Stephen, I got a great idea for you. We're going to use for a show, which is the good stuff about the car business.
There you go.
Thanks,
Okay, well,
guys.
thanks, everybody.
Pleasure. Take care.
Happy weekend,
Bye.
former Thanksgiving, etc.
Yeah.
Bye.